So we're back on the record. I think we left it with, we needed to do some research and some consideration on a number of things. And in kind of going back through what we talked about the last time, I'm not sure I was surprised, but I was a little taken back by the concept that hourly rate seems to be the most important aspect of what you're saying, the new people and people that are considering to be leaving, and they're really not looking at any of the other ad pays or alternative pays or really the quality of the job as a whole. I can understand that, but I want to make sure that that's really what we're talking about is that those other aspect of things really are of critical importance.
I would say that a more accurate statement would probably be to say that of all of those issues, the hourly rate currently is the thing that lags furthest behind, I guess, what their expectations are. And so that's the sore spot. It's not that those other things are unimportant. It's that something that is very important has been neglected for a long period of time from their perspective.
Okay. Because I kind of looked, and this isn't all inclusive. It's just the ones that jumped out at me in looking at the contract that over and above base pay, additional pays or additional compensation that is received is VIBA, of course, the clothing allowance, making somebody whole under the comp time. Generally in the private sector, you get your comp payment, but you don't get the rest of your salary, and the city make sure that you're paid the full salary when you're on a comp claim. On-call pay, bilingual pay, the legal defense fund, physical fitness incentive, the education incentive, the court time, shift differential, general step-up pay. There's some additional pays for the K-9. I'm not sure that that's additional pay because it's the extra hours, but you're getting overtime for it, and the FTO pay of $35 a pay. Those are all kind of additional pays. Now, if none of those existed, my rough numbers would indicate that you might be able to, in best case scenario, take the value of all of those and dump it into the salary schedule and may increase base pay at maybe $1.50 an hour. I mean, it's not a substantial increase in base pay in considering, and then you've got the tax issues that go along with that, because a lot of these are not don't affect your taxes. So in looking at the department, and what we were talking about with the chief is how do you reorganize a department which would require taking a bunch of these and shifting them from where they're at now into base pay without it really having a major effect, I think, on the quality of the job experience or everything that comes about. And I think Scott and his crew has done consideration and had a meeting, and as he put it to me, he says it wasn't pretty.
It's not. You would have to lose positions from the bottom, and there's a lot of extra stuff that we do. I'm not willing to give them up. We've put way too much into the way that we operate that I'm not willing to do that. I'm not giving up positions. So not going to do it.
Because that's really the primary way that you generate internal money as compared to external money, and I guess I would define internal money as being how do you shift the money that's already there as compared to bringing in new money into the budget, which would be external money. And since we last met, we've had the opportunity to have a meeting with a majority of the council, and we know where the council's coming from, and so what we've done is we've generated an offer that is consistent with where the council indicated they wanted us to be. and we promised we'd come back with an offer. It's basically similar to what has been budgeted in the general budget as a placeholder for general, which is 2.5%. So with that, I'll let Heather, she's got a few of the little housekeeping issues, I'd call them, and then she'll present you with the offer.
This is in response to the additional workout time and gym membership proposal that you brought. This is a counter to your proposal 4. So we agree that moving from 2 to 3 hours of workout time based upon manpower is fine. We did, however, remove the additional money set aside for gym memberships.
And the reason is because the additional monies, the $30 per month per person equates to, for budgetary purposes, the city has to assume that everybody's going to do it. So from that standpoint, you're doing $360 per year for, I can't remember, what is it, 130 some employees. It's approaching a $50,000 cost that has to be budgeted. And one of the issues then at the end of each year is if people don't use that, it's budgeted for the 50 and maybe 35,000 is used, then that's the 15,000 is what goes back. And you always wondered how that happens. That's an example of how that kind of stuff happens is because people don't use the benefit, but we have to assume that everybody's going to use it. And budgeting that 50,000 just doesn't work this year.
Any questions on that one?
No.
It doesn't. Well, I do have a question. It doesn't work this year because why?
Because it's $50,000.
Did it work last year?
It's only 26.
It's the $10 thing.
Yeah, what you currently have will remain. It's just
Right.
not the increase.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant in
Oh, no.
general all of it was done.
No, just
just the
what
increase.
we
We're just
currently
rejecting the
budgeted, it'll be
increase
fine.
request.
Okay.
This is just a correction to the VIBA prorate that corrects that word from union to unit. So at the bottom, it just lists the handing of this out due to correction. Just a housekeeping issue. Do you have any additional corrections on that one? Or questions?
Any questions?
This is a counter proposal to your EAP, and we're left the mandatory in. We did, however, add evidence text. We had talked about that last year, and we said we would revisit this year. So this is the city revisiting it.
I think everybody thinks this is a great program, and I think having it at least in place for another year so we have additional data to understand, and I think at least the technical people on this side of the table that know and understand this, understand and acknowledge that evidence techs see stuff that officers do as well, and that it makes sense to include them for that purpose in this program. Anything else?
Any questions or concerns on that one?
Nope. So we're going to call this management pay proposal number 1, just so we have it numbered. So this is a 2.5% increase to the table. So how I added that, just so we have clarification, is I added it to column 1, that 2214 had 2.5% added from the current base wage. On page 2, shows what that equates to on an annual basis. So that'd be column 1, line 2. There was concern last time that there haven't been any real increases for officers. So what I did is I started with fiscal year 16 was the last year you guys had longevity on the sworn scale. You had one step, basically, so I took your max and I compared it to max over 17, which was the first year of the scale, 18, 19, which is the one we're currently on, and then the increase, which is column F, since 16 to 20, that includes what our current proposal is. That's the hourly rate span increase. From 16 to 20, the overall increase for an entry-level officer has been 11.4%. From last year to this year, you'll see everyone across the board went up 2.5%. I have this with annual salaries, if you're interested in seeing that. I think that's page 4 of your document. And then page 5 is just the current scale and the contract for reference.
Does column G take into account the 2.5%?
Yes. This is the cost of what our offer is. So a 2.5% increase plus one step comes out to $144,371.76.
I need to interject that this cost does not include the increased cost with respect to overtime. That's almost impossible to calculate, and for purposes of the general employees, that's the cost is generally not taken into consideration. So we're trying to be apples to apples comparison to what is budgeted for them and what we've budgeted for them.
When you calculated these costs, that was taken into account the increase in grade for FY20 for the sworn, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So you
any
incorporate-
rank increases, so if somebody was moving up a rank, all of that was left the same. So it's basically the step increase and any rank increases that were budgeted for.
Paradise or Wamazawa is available.
Before we go, do you have those numbers from Joyce?
For the,
North Nelson.
the county's looking at around 60 million, which is going to be approximately 800,000 to the city.
And then how much of that had the city already taken?
That's what we will be getting.
Okay.
So, to the city as a whole, we're still calculating the general fund impact to that, because that's what the whole city will get.
When will the city realize that?
It'll be for tax year 19, which is FY 20. So we will build it into this next year's budget.
Okay, so approximately 12 months from now is when the city would actually realize those funds.
The total amount, yeah, but we build it into the budget. So the tax year is a year behind. It's kind of weird,
So
but
as to property taxes that are being paid on a monthly basis, that's currently coming in now?
the 60 million or?
No, the 800,000. We're talking about the expiration of the TIF district, correct?
So that is still going to the TIF. The TIF has not been closed.
Okay.
Yes, we're a year behind on that money coming in.
Right, so in 1 year is when the city will
Right.
actually start to have that money.
Right, so we build it into FY 20's budget
Right.
as if we have it.
Okay, that makes
Because
sense.
that's when it should come on, as long as it's closed by, I believe it's the end of June, they'll put it on the tax rolls, so we'll get it all in as new construction. So it'll add to our valuation.
Okay.
The county has to do that, what, September 15th? September, first week of September is when they set all the levy amounts. and-
We have to have our levy stuff to them by September 5th or 6th this year.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yep. But they won't have actual valuations until, we don't get our final valuations till December.
Right.
Yep.
But for purposes of the county needing to set
Yep.
whatever levies are, it occurs that early September timeframe.
Yep. And we should know new construction by August, the beginning of August, which that money should be included in the new construction.
New construction, just anywhere in the city, or are we talking?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is generally around 20 million, which is what we always budget for.
Okay.
Okay?
So do you want to take a break?
Yeah, we should probably take a break.
Okay.
Which conference room?
What?
You go to lunch?
No, man. Sometimes you don't eat when you're working. Touche. Have me a Lara bar.
Wow, went all out with the dates, huh?
I like kind better than Lara Bar.
Tracy's got an Easter egg that he took out of the basket.
You only stole one? I'm sure.
Yeah, I've got.
No, Namahala.
Just drown myself.
Please don't.
Are we on?
Yep.
Okay. So, I guess just as an initial thing, we appreciate what was said about the different aspects besides just hourly rate, the different incentives that are there, and because those are important, and the officers that get those obviously work really hard for those things, and it's a good thing to have in place in a department. It affects obviously the overall quality of the job, and so we appreciate essentially that recognition of those value-added programs that contribute to the quality of the job. With that said, so as I understand it, sitting back in our caucus, the department currently loses 4.2 officers a year who leave not due to retirement, 2 for retirement. And the hard cost of replacing each of them is, roughly $88,000, just for the just hard cost of actual training and wages paid to an individual before they're ready to be in a car and on patrol. To say nothing of obviously the administrative cost and benefits and things like that are a hard cost to the city as well. And so obviously there are programs that add value and quality to the job, but nevertheless, that's what, with those programs in place, that's what the program, or whether that's what the department is losing now, that just in order to tread water, it has to replace on an annual basis. And so obviously roughly $400,000 in hard costs just to tread water for officers that are leaving for reasons other than retirement. Then I did have a question. The last time that we met, you had summarized the pay scale offer number 1 at 15%, and at wages you had $8,410,610.78, and the same numbers, the same category reflected here today is about 18,000 less. Do we know what the difference is there?
We had some issues with our projection file, so when I was calculating these numbers, I was just basically making sure I had a file that was even, and then with the additions only to police. So I had to go in and fix the projection file. The numbers that we have today are the corrected numbers, because I had some things that were off. But
what were the things that were off?
Well, the file I don't know what happened. It was an IT thing. They did like a backup. They downloaded from backup, and so I had some issues with that.
Okay.
And so they are fixed.
Do we actually know what changed that caused the difference of 18,000 there?
There would be, let's see, trying to think of what police had to do. Food allowances, I'm not sure if they were in there or not.
So that made the price come down to have food allowances included in?
No, that would increase it. I think I might have had some of the retirements might have rolled in that weren't supposed to be in there. There were just some weird things that happened, so I kind of just started over.
Okay.
So the numbers, like the differences are correct, because I had just a file I was working on, but that's why those numbers are a little bit different.
Okay. And so I guess where I would go with that is that we're kind of, I feel that we're at a little bit of a disadvantage where we're sort of relying on you guys for what the numbers are. I think what would be helpful is if we could actually see some hard costs, the actual costs instead of obviously a spreadsheet printout, like the expenditures over a fiscal year for the police department.
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference between what you're talking about and expenditures. So are you asking for a budget build of a salary projection, or are you asking for expenditures for the year?
Well, I think I want to see, what's been spent on the police department for probably a few fiscal years.
The entire budget amount?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, it's a little bit, I guess by analogy, obviously, Scott, when you're in litigation and you propound discovery requests and things like that so that you can be informed of, what the real face of your case looks like. And so I know that we don't, have a mechanism under the authority of a court to say, okay, give us this or that or whatever. But it would be helpful if we could come to some sort of an accommodation to propound some requests like that, so that we have some hard data.
And I'm not
to
saying that it's
review.
unreasonable. I'm just
Okay.
saying that here's, from a pragmatic standpoint, the problems that I see.
Go ahead.
I don't see your request being specific.
Well, we can make a specific
Okay,
request.
so
We can-
the
Yeah, we
more
can narrow the
the more
request.
specificity and the narrower the request, the better, number one.
Absolutely.
Number two is, I don't have any idea the time involved for staff to do that. And they're not really gonna know until we know the specifics of your request. Because if they're sitting there going, it's gonna take us 100 hours to do what they're asking
Sure.
for, in the midst of budgeting and everything that's going on, I think that's unreasonable, just from a pragmatic standpoint.
Well, I understand that, but I'm sure you would agree that and I understand that that's a burden and that has to be considered in what kind of a burden it is. But from the other side, I'm sure you can appreciate that we need actual data to.
Sure, and I'm
Right.
not disputing that at all.
Okay.
But I think that what you're talking about, or at least the feeling I get what you're talking about, has a lot of information in it that wouldn't necessarily be relevant to our discussions.
Right, and we can narrow that
And
to
so
the
it
extent
needs- it
that
needs
we
to
don't,
be-
cause them to have a burden
It
to go
absolutely
after
needs to
something that
be
doesn't matter.
as narrow as possible so that we can sit there and go, this doesn't make any sense why this relates in any way to our discussions. And if you can say, for this reason, okay, that makes sense, then, or, yeah, maybe it doesn't. It
Okay.
becomes a negotiation
Sure.
of utilizing their time the best in order to provide you the necessary relevant information, because I think that's important.
Right.
And I think you also have to remember that this was merely an estimate, and that's what we indicated.
Right.
For purposes to get a feel for what the potential
Right,
cost
and
would be.
I'm not suggesting anything untoward about putting that together. I just we didn't know the basis of it, and so I wanted to ask the question because it was different. Now, with that said, 2.5% is going to be really low for us to take back to the union, and we're willing to sort of go at like a multi-year structure or something, so that the city doesn't feel the full burden in the first year. So it's obviously, because it takes time to bring things to a certain place, and we don't want to cripple the city and put it up against the levy, as we discussed last time. But we did review. Do you have that, the January 9th city council meeting? We reviewed a city council meeting where Heather and another person I don't know, Lynette Sampson, were present to present numbers to the city council on specifically on police compensation. Well, they did. I think you guys went through the fire department as well.
We talked about the entire city's compensation.
Right. So there's a portion of that we just wanted to go over real quick. it wasn't on. All right.
Our technical specialists.
We'll give that back to you guys.
Hold on.
They're both on.
Are we plugged in?
Yeah, they usually say like last or something.
It's flashing.
Pushed a different button. That's good.
That's a good sound.
Oh, they say.
And it comes on.
Sounds like it's working on something.
Just push buttons till it starts. Like,
Right? That's kind of-
Why not?
Oh, oh.
Yeah.
Heather was setting me up on that one.
There we go.
Hopefully the sound will work.
I had gender calculated on it, but I didn't have the minority information, so I didn't present that.
Oh, you're making me
If
listen
you're
to
interested
myself.
in it, I can get
Such a
it.
weird voice.
Everybody feels that.
Those are dulcet tones.
Questions on that absolutely.
As excited there as I do here.
So, we're here to show you exactly where the employees fall right now. All employees. We advocate for all departments. We're one city, we all work for the same entity, so we wanted to show you where everybody was right now. And then we need to talk about where we're headed.
We'll need to supply
Police
a
and
copy
fire,
of
we
this
expect them
for
to open
It should be
negotiations
on that now.
within
It's
the next 4 to
the
6
January
weeks.
9th.
But you need to provide her
We want to show
where you
you
pulled it from so she can add it to the minutes.
Right,
Oh.
it needs to be added to the minutes.
Did you
Where they are
pull
current-
it from, just so that
From
we
the city website,
Okay.
or under city council agenda.
Okay.
And I can tell you the national trend, including the trend in Idaho, has been police are receiving substantial increases because it's so hard to get them and
Can I
to
ask
keep
what
them.
we're looking at?
Brady and
I
I
mean, like,
don't know if
You
you all
scope-
remember you were there?
granted that.
The scope of why we're watching
You'll see.
a different presentation.
Right.
Listen,
All
We
of
just think it's
them.
relevant
We
to the
advocate
discussion
for all of
that
them.
we're having now.
because this was.
Akila, I
this
can
was-
ask,
This was 5 months ago.
but I can
I know,
ask.
but this was 5 months ago, and this.
Akila.
But Akila, I can ask.
Okay. But you know.
Departments. We're one city, we all work for the same entity, so we wanted to show you where everybody was right now. And then we need to talk about where we're headed. Police and fire, we expect
You
Is
can't
there a
hear
way
me. I
to
can't-
raise the volume on that?
I struggle, I can't hear
No,
anyway.
this won't go up any better.
Can't hear everybody you're talking to.
All right.
You can play it and I'll see if this is.
them to open negotiations within the next 4 to 6 weeks. We want to show you where they are currently. And I can tell you the national trend, including the trend in Idaho, has been police are receiving substantial increases because it is so hard to get them and to keep.
Okay, I will paraphrase. She said that the trend in Idaho, and she says that we're going to be going into negotiations at this time in 4 to 6 weeks. And the trend in Idaho is that police departments are getting substantial increases because it's so hard to hire and so hard to retain employees.
Keep them. Brady and I don't know if you all heard, granted that really large raise to their police departments. Coeur d'Alene, which is an entity I use for market analysis, they did grant a 2.5% increase to their general employees and their fire this year. Their beginning police officers, or people in the classification of police officers, received a 10% increase. Sergeant, lieutenant, and captain received a 34% increase. And then their police chief received a 12. So this is the trend with police department. Fire department, we're currently working with, or we were working.
All right. So obviously, the context or the point in showing that is that, you know, we know that even within the city that there's an awareness that the trend is that police departments specifically are getting substantial increases. And in this particular department, obviously they gave up longevity, they gave up, we feel like they've played ball for a long time, and it's kind of their turn. And so 15% is still where we're at. But if it's easier for the city to do that over a period of, did you guys want 2 or 3?
Can explore both options.
Either 2 or 3 years, so that and it could go 5, 5, and 5, but so that at least there was a commitment to come to that point, and so it wouldn't have to necessarily be revisited each year. And we could do, the other thing that we had discussed is we could do the entire collective bargaining agreement that way, so that we don't have to go to the time and expense of sitting down every year. I mean, I'm happy to build the file, and I'm sure Scott is as
Do you
well.
want to do that? How long have we gone back to this? I mean, we changed, I can't remember why we
3, 4,
changed,
5
right?
years ago.
Has it been that long?
About 5 years ago we changed.
Okay, all right.
I had to help get through civil service and to change over to the PAR and stuff.
Okay.
Right, my understanding is that there were certain extenuating circumstances that made it much more convenient to do it on a yearly basis in order to address some of those issues, but my understanding is that those things have been addressed, and so there wouldn't be a problem going back to a multi-year deal.
And again, the reason that we bring this up, and even go back to where we know that the city is aware of what the trend has been, it's not just a cutthroat want more money. It's trying to keep people here, and it's trying to get qualified employees to come here and fill these positions. And that's what we've been seeing is we're losing people, we're not keeping people, and we've got to reverse that trend.
And later in that same meeting, actually, the council questions her, and I'm sure you remember this, the council questions her on why certain positions hadn't been filled, even though they were approved, and she said it was because they couldn't find qualified candidates to fill them, which obviously is influenced by how much they think they're going to make.
Well, I think that may be a factor for certain people, but I don't think that that's a generalization.
Well, it is a generalization, but I don't think
Well,
that
my
it's unfair
understanding
to
is
suggest
that
That comment
No,
wasn't made
it's-
as towards police employees. That comment that she
Citywide.
made was citywide to include
Oh,
heavy
okay.
equipment operators.
Right.
So do you have an offer?
Right, so our counteroffer would be still at 15%, but, you know, because we went through and we did some quick math, and we're at 2.5% on some of those, but at some of the steps, it's actually goes down to 2.4. I'm not sure how the matrix populates, but for some of those stages, it actually went down to a 2.4% increase. And so we're still at 15, but we can break that up over a period of years to come to that point.
And what specifically do you want?
Why don't we say 5% per year?
Our main goal is to retain the people we have. And it's getting harder and harder.
So
Keep in mind-
retention is the primary factor, not recruitment.
Yes.
I think it's hand in hand. It goes both ways.
I agree, hand in hand.
Okay.
And we do understand that even doing a multi-year contract with increases, that would still put us 3 years out behind what the market at that time is going to be. And we're aware of that.
At least it's progress.
And it would be closer. I mean, part of I feel like what's putting both sides at a disadvantage here, and I sat with these guys and spoke at length. You know, whenever I'm in a civil litigation situation, we're carving up a company. You know, the first thing that you do is you go out and you get a certified valuation expert to come in and consider all the different factors where the customer radius, primary competitors, all those kinds of things to tell you what the real value is and what the real cost of certain things is, so that you can put a price on it to buy each other out, right? And I feel like kind of a disadvantage that both sides are at right now is that it doesn't seem like that kind of an analysis has been done as to the real cost associated with retaining versus recruitment of new employees. Because while we can quantify, the wages and the training to get somebody to the point where they can get in a patrol car, but it doesn't take into account the administrative burden on the city of getting someone there. It doesn't take into account the hours and the time that different people have to spend getting this person oriented and training. And because really what you do is, I don't know, Chief, what your average incoming group of recruits is, but let's say that it's 4. And you're going to spend, I don't know, let's say 1,000 hours in a year just training, on training. Well, so their wages have to be calculated as part of the training, but now the trainers' wages need to be sliced into 4, and a fourth of that needs to be added as well, because now that's part of the real cost of training. And I mean, you could get it all the way down to keeping the lights on in that room while they're training, and what's the cost of that. And so I feel like both sides are sort of operating at a little bit of a disadvantage because we don't have that. And if it's not feasible this year for the union to bear that, but if it were something feasible that the city could help with, where we could have that kind of an analysis done by some forensic accountants so that we could look at the real numbers of what it costs. Because I suspect that where we've said, okay, well, it's $90,000 to put an officer in a patrol car, my guess is it's closer to 180, honestly. The real hard dollars cost. And I know that just in a commercial sense, on average, any just business out there costs 10 times. They spend $10 to get a new customer versus 1 to retain one. And so it makes more sense to spend your money on retention. And I feel like if we were able to quantify that, the city would see, wow, we are spending a lot of money just to replace people. And if we put that into retention, we could spend much less and have a more happy, productive department. I don't know if that's something that's feasible to do. It would probably cost between $5,000 and $10,000 to have it done. The union can't absorb it all, otherwise they would. And that's not a suggestion. I'm throwing that out there in case it's something that's possible from the city's point to help with something like that, to have an analysis like that done, which I think would benefit probably the city much more than the police department. But at any rate, I think that's some training wheels that are on the bike right now that are keeping us from turning left and right a little bit. Short of that, between obviously now and the next time we sit down, I don't know, how does the city, does the city have bank accounts with a bank for its, for the money that is spent on police and things like that? Is that coming out of a bank? Is that coming out of some other fund? Or how's that even done?
We have a bank account. All the city's money is in one bank account. We don't have a bank account for every single department. We do a bank reconciliation based on fund, but they are part of the general fund, so that's 12 departments.
Okay, so, all right. So, I work with reconciliations. When they do them, do they specify them per department so that you can see that on a per department basis?
No. General fund is not broken out in any way. It's just the general fund as a whole.
Okay. So, what steps does the city take to quantify what it's spending on the police department?
We would just look at a budget worksheet, like a detailed budget worksheet would show the expenses that are to that account line. Okay.
How hard would that be to get for like 3 fiscal years?
Easy.
Would it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so between now and then, would we be able to get that either?
Do you want a yearly summary or do you want monthly?
A yearly summary would be easier. A monthly would take longer.
Okay, so maybe let's start with a yearly summary, since that's easy, because maybe that'll give us what we want.
What is it you're looking for specifically? You're looking at what we spend on personnel? Or you're looking at what we spend overall?
Yes.
Overall?
Yeah, just specific to the police department. I mean, I don't know how specific the year-end summary is going to be.
It's specific to the police department.
Right, so just, I mean, we'll look at it first, but it may tell us everything we want to know. So I did want to ask some questions about the TIF district. My understanding is there are procedural requirements for a number of hearings and things that have to take place before the TIF district can be closed. Is that in progress right now?
Yes, as far as I know, yes.
Okay, so all the meetings, the requisite meetings have been scheduled?
That's on the county side. We're not involved in that.
I know as far as on our side that they are working on it, and I think that they're on schedule. That's all.
Okay, but some of the required meetings are the ones that have to take place with the council, right? Or somebody within the city?
It's a PDA issue, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay.
So you don't know what stage of the process they're in, as far as the PDA had their meetings and?
Yeah, I'm not part of the
PDA is a
They're
separate entity from the city.
Right, I just figured they would have apprised you of where they were in the process. since-
I am not in charge of that.
So the city,
Okay.
the city doesn't
Melanie-
have sort of any control or input as to the timing or procedure of closing the
The
TIF
people that
district?
work on the PDA would know about that.
Okay, so we'd have to talk to them.
The only link is that sometimes there's council members that are also on the board of the PDA.
Right.
But other than that, there's no link between the
There's no
PDA and the
direct-
city.
Okay, and that makes sense. Okay, and other than just the bank statements, does the city track actual costs to the department any other way as far as administrative costs and soft costs and hard costs and those kinds of things?
So we charge them an administrative cost that is based off of budget. We run it through the budget and we pay based on a matrix.
Okay.
And so the police department will pay a certain portion of interfund charges to other departments for things.
Okay,
And those will show up on the budget sheets or on the detailed budget
and
worksheet.
is that also the way you account for like non-recurring costs?
Non-recurring costs like capital or?
No, like a non-recurring cost would be like purchase of a new cruiser or things like that.
So those will be in the capital lines.
Okay. All right, then that probably is as much as we'll need.
So what time frame?
Heather, how long will it take to?
It's Ashley's business,
Right.
Heather.
It's okay, you have to learn a whole new group of
That's
people
right.
on this side of the table.
All right.
I can get
Ashley.
them printed off right now.
For the last 3 years?
Yep.
So we're talking 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19.
So 16, 17, and 18 fiscal
That's-
years.
We're in the
fine.
middle of one, so it would be incomplete data.
Yeah, and you don't want 19.
So I'm just
No.
wondering whether
Right.
you want to go back one further year, that's what,
Yeah, 16, 17, 18 is fine.
okay, those 2 years.
Yeah.
I can get them right now.
So I don't, what's the notice requirement on the meetings? They've got to be noticed a certain,
24 hours.
oh, is that it?
Unions is as soon as reasonably feasible.
Okay. Look at my calendar. Scott, you're a Boise guy. When's the next time you're going to be over here?
I will be here the 8th.
Okay.
In fact, we will have the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service in town. So if we want to take advantage of them as part of this, we can do that the afternoon of the 8th.
We could. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we're really at an impasse yet. I know.
Well, I don't see mediations outside there being an impasse as much as giving a third party an opportunity to help refine the issue as much as anything.
We could do that.
And Daryl Clark, that's all he does. He works for federal government and it's free and he's,
Daryl Clark?
Daryl Clark is his name, from Portland.
I know Merlin Clark.
Yeah, Merlin's attorney in Boise, but, so Daryl, we're doing fire mediation on the 9th, and Daryl indicated to me that he could come in and be here by by noon, but then be ready to go by 2 the afternoon of the 8th.
Okay.
If if we wanted to meet with the police, so we could do that.
Okay.
And then we'll be doing fire on the 9th, and then depending, Daryl said that he would stay over until 5 on the 10th to either finish up one or both.
Okay.
So while he's in town, I'm just saying that.
Right.
Because
No,
to get him, it's free, which makes it
Sure.
great, and to get him
That's the best price.
could be another 5 or 6 weeks out.
Okay. Well, and you preliminary set us, didn't you?
We're noticed for the 8th
Right.
at 2 p.m.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody?
Because I have to hog every conference room in City
That's
Hall, so I just try to
that's a
do that
Wednesday?
ahead of time.
2. Yes, good. Okay.
And go as far into the night as anybody wants to go. If we're making strides, let's
I'm a
make
midnight guy.
strides.
Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And then we have some flexibility on Friday.
Okay.
As well, so.
Okay.
But it just makes sense that if he's here and he can
Sure.
help us, then,
Yeah.
because I don't think we're at impasse either, but it helps refine the issues.
Right.
And another independent party to bounce ideas off of.
Absolutely.
And he has good ideas when he does these too. So that's not
Right.
an issue.
Well, very good. Thank you. Ashley.
We retain one of those to attach to the minutes? Okay.
I will. I'm gonna get it.
Very good. I'll scan these in an email. So you got 'em.
Okay, so we'll schedule for the 8th, we'll schedule this room as the public, and then we'll schedule the two conference rooms, one for you and one for us.
Right.
For caucuses.
And as to the other counters, we'll try to have an answer on those for when we come back.
Yeah, then we can start TA and stuff.
Very good.
Go from there.
Thanks, guys.
Excellent, thank you.